Alright, over the next several videos, we're going to take a look at creating cinematic sequences using Unreal Matinee. As we go along, you're going to learn about working with cameras, about animating skeletal meshes, animating things like materials and lights, adding soundtracks, a lot of different things we're going to cover. But on top of that, I'm going to show you how you can add some extra Kismet sequencing in the background to really take your feature, your cinematic film, and work that into gameplay so that it just kind of feels like one blends right into the other and that the player becomes part of that movie. Now let's give a quick demo of what we've put together here. Now if we take a look here in the room, there's a little skeletal mesh of a robot. He's standing there with a link gun and not much else to do. If we fly back here to the back room, there's a little glowing blue switch, and that's all we have right now. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and fire the level up. The first time through, I'm going to be completely quiet, and you just take in everything that's there, okay? Alright, did you see everything that happened there? Let's go through it one more time, and this time I'll point everything out to you. So let's jump back in. Notice that we've got some kind of nice ambient music playing in the background. Come around the corner, and when we hit the switch, the camera pulls back to show the light. We get some different music. Robot comes and threatens us, and we fly back to the player. Now the music changes again, and we get into a firefight. Now currently, the sequence is in debug mode, meaning that we're actually reporting some information about this robot's health to the player right now. And if you notice, I can hit this guy as hard as I want to, and I'm never really going to get him low enough to kill him. Basically, my gun just isn't strong enough. So if I go get the rocket launcher, as long as I can score a direct hit, he's toast. So a lot of different things taking place, but as soon as he's dead, notice our original music fades back in. So there's a lot of different things we're going to cover. We'll walk you through the entire process of putting this sequence together step by step. I'm really excited to get started, so let's go ahead and get rolling. Okay, so now you have seen the cinematic sequence that we're going to be putting together, and our next step is to build the thing. Now our first step, the first thing we're going to do is bring in the skeletal mesh that will be threatening the player, doing the little throat slit and all of that stuff. Now this will not be the same actor which is going to go hunt down our character and shoot him. We're actually going to do a little bit of sleight of hand. We'll start off with a skeletal mesh, because a skeletal mesh can be animated with Matinee. We can actually tell that skeletal mesh to perform a specific animation, but we can't tell a skeletal mesh to just immediately start hunting down the player and shooting at them. So what we'll do is we'll perform this animation, and then when it's done, we'll destroy out that skeletal mesh and then spawn in an AI bot, which will take care of the rest of the work for us. However, before we do any of that, we need a skeletal mesh in here. So go ahead and open up your content browser, and I'm going to click All Assets and clear out my search line. And I want you to type in Liam, L-I-A-M, and that will bring up SK_CH Liam Cathode. And let's just drag this guy out of the content browser. Now here inside the view, I'm going to set this guy up on top of the ground. So tap spacebar, slide him up, and I got to get him away from that static mesh so I can see where his feet touch the ground. And there he is right on the ground. Now currently my drag grid settings are at 4. So if you want to have the same amount of snap, you can use that. Now I'm going to rotate this guy so that he's looking right at the door. So tap spacebar, and there we go. So now he just needs a weapon. Let's go back to the content browser, and we'll empty this out. And I want you to search for link gun. So one word, L-I-N-K-G-U-N, and narrow down to skeletal meshes only. And there's SKWP Link Gun 3P. That's the third person version, so make sure you're using that one. And I already closed the content browser, so I'll just do add actor, add skeletal mesh, like so. Now, we need to put this into the character's hand. I mean, we could sit here and try to actually line it up with his right hand, but that's time consuming. What we're going to do instead is make sure that we have the link gun selected. Then up in the main toolbar, click Enable Disable Socket Snapping. It's got the little red trapezoid and a black arrow on the button. Click that, and then click on the robot's right hand, and you're finished. At that point, go ahead and disable the button, and then deselect the link gun, and there you go. So he's already holding the gun. As a matter of fact, if we animate the skeletal mesh at this point, everything's already linked as well, so the link gun will actually move around with his hand, which is pretty great. Now, that's all I really wanted to do here. We're using this guy really just as a prop to help keep things nice and organized. Here in just a moment, we're going to animate a camera. And now with that robot here, we have something that we can actually focus on and zoom in on, knowing exactly where he's going to be in the view and how we can frame him up. So that's our first step, which is going to wrap things up for this video. Thanks a lot. All right, now our next step is going to be to set up and animate our camera. Now, I highly recommend that when you're making cinematics on your own, you get to this step as soon as you possibly can, because once you have the camera's movement established, you can animate the rest of your scene so that everything coincides with what the camera's doing, and you don't end up animating things that the camera's not looking at anyway. So the first thing we need is a camera. We can't just use our viewport, and we're not going to be allowed to just use the player's perspective and move the player around. So let's open up our content browser. And then I'm going to jump over to the Actor Classes browser, and you'll see a camera actor listed up here at the topmost level. Let's close out the browser. I'm going to right-click here on the ground and choose Add Camera Actor here. So if we deselect and have a look, this is our camera actor. It looks like a camera, though right now it's completely in silhouette because it's unlit. Now, we can position this camera using the translation widget. We can rotate it and point it at stuff if we wanted to. But you're quickly going to find that manipulating a camera in this fashion is highly counterintuitive. What we're going to do instead is make use of Lock Selected Actors to Camera, which is a special mode of your viewport. Now, the button for this is located in every viewport's toolbar. You're going to be using it in perspective. So let's go ahead and click on this, and then click on the camera. What that does is that jumps your perspective's view to exactly what the camera sees. But that's not all. The cool thing is that now, as we move the camera around, as we rotate our view around, I should say, the camera is coming along for the ride. So if I frame us up right here on the robot, get some kind of a cool angle of him, maybe something like so. If we just simply jump out of the view, so we deselect Lock Selected Actors to Camera, and now pull back, check it out. The camera is now looking right at the robot. So we can use this as a way to very easily and interactively position cameras. So what I'm going to do is fly over here. And I'm going to aim the camera kind of roughly at this switch. Like so. Just kind of keep that switch there dead center of the view, and the camera over here by the stairs. Now let me jump out of Lock Selected Actors to Camera, and you can see where he's positioned in 3D space. So right over the stairway, staring right at the switch. All right, so now it's time for us to begin animating the camera. So I'm going to pop open Kismet, and it's time for us to create our first matinee sequence. So we'll right-click, choose New Matinee, and let's zoom in here. I'm going to double-click this new sequence object, and we see Unreal Matinee. Now, Matinee has several different controls, an interesting user interface, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold back on actually covering this interface. This interface is covered in the videos over moving objects with Matinee, so if you're really interested in all of the buttons and knobs and whatnot, and you're totally new to this, you may want to take just a moment and flip over there to that section. Just, at least that way we're not repeating ourselves too heavily. Okay, so we've still got our camera selected, and you'll probably want to verify that in your viewport. I want you to right-click in your track group list. Now that's the dark bar here on the left-hand side. And I want you to create a new camera group. Not an empty group, but a camera group. Now, camera group requires a name first thing, so we'll call this Action Cam. Click OK, and it comes in by default with a movement track and an FOV angle track to handle zooming the camera, which is fantastic. And so using this, we're going to go ahead and animate our camera. Now, to make this easier, I'm going to do a few things. One, I'm going to demaximize the perspective view. Next, I'm going to adjust my viewport configuration just a little bit so that I can have a smaller matinee window here on the right, and I can still use the viewport over here on the left. Now, it would be most useful if while we are animating, we could actually see what the camera saw, which we can do. If we take a look at the Action Cam group over here in Matinee, there's a little tiny camcorder button, and if I click on that, we're now looking through the eyes of this camera, which is pretty nice. Now, obviously, we're zoomed back pretty far away from that switch, so the very first thing I'd like to do is zoom us in. And to do that, we need to place a keyframe on our FOV angle, which is currently unanimated. There's no keys on it whatsoever. Now, the animation workflow inside of Matinee is you place a keyframe first, and then you adjust the value of that keyframe. So the first thing I'm going to do is, here with my FOV angle track selected, I'm going to press Enter, and you can see that drops a keyframe, little orange triangle there. I'm going to right-click on it and set its value down to 45 degrees, and that will effectively zoom the camera in. Now, at this point, we're expecting there to be a player here as well. In fact, we could probably go just a little bit further in. Let's try setting that to 35 and just see what we get. That might be just a little bit better. So the player is going to be standing roughly here. We're just kind of using this switch to help us out a little bit. And we can click on our first movement key and just kind of make a little bit of a minor tweak there. Now, let's go ahead and start handling our animation. Now, I am going to be animating zoom and motion at the same time. And the only reason I'm doing that is because really that's how you're generally going to be working a camera. You're not just going to make one big pass for all your motion and then another pass for your zoom. Go ahead and animate them both at the same time, and then if you need to make tweaks, you can do all that when you're finished. So we've got our first keys laid down. Now, a couple of things will make your life a little easier if you set them up at the outset. In the main toolbar of the Matinee window, take your snap setting, your snap size, and pull that down to 0.05 from the drop-down. Also, make sure that toggle snap is activated. That'll make it a lot easier to follow along with the keys that I'm going to be placing. Now, we're going to slide the time slider forward to about 0.5 seconds. So right here at half a second, I'm going to go ahead and press Enter. Now, at this point, I want to be looking up at the light. So I'm going to rotate the camera. Actually, I'm sorry. That's my mistake. I don't want to be looking at the camera right now. I don't want to be looking at the light right now. Excuse me. In fact, what I'm going to do is delete that key, because what I want to do is actually look up at the light bulb at 1 second, and here all I want to do is pull back my zoom. I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and jump down to FOV angle, and I'll drop down a key and right-click, and we'll set the value here back to 90 degrees. Now I'm going to jump forward to 1 second, and now we'll switch to the movement track and press Enter. Remember, you got to put that keyframe down first and then make your adjustment. And now we're going to look up at the light, but obviously we're pretty far away. So it would be nice if we could zoom back in on that light bulb. So we'll jump back down to FOV angle, drop a key here as well. Let's right-click and set our value. Let's see what 45 looks like. That's pretty good, but I am going to jump back up one more key to my movement key, so I'm just clicking on that, and we'll center that up. This is another reason why it's good to animate both of these at the same time. Sometimes you can't really tell exactly what you're zoomed in on until you actually zoom in and have a look. Okay, so now we've shifted the perspective from the switch over to the light. Let's stop and hit play and just see what we've got. Very cool. So, kind of straightforward at this point. We zoom back, we look at the light. Now, I want to hold on the light while it kind of flickers to life. So we're not really going to do anything for a full second. I'm going to bring my time slider all the way here to 2 seconds. Press Enter on the movement track. Select the FOV angle. Press Enter there too. So it's just maintaining that value over a full second. Now once that second is over, we got some stuff to do. I'm going to switch up to 3 seconds. So over a 1 second shift, we're going to turn and look at the door. So let's go to the movement track, press enter, and now I'm just going to rotate the camera to look at the door. But we're a little bit zoomed up. That's a little further than I want to see the door. I'd like to zoom back, just like we did when we shifted from the light switch up here to the light bulb. So I'm going to track back to around 2.5. Press enter here on the FOV angle track. Right click on the new keyframe that appears, and we'll set the value back up to 90 degrees. So all we've done is we've started at the switch, zoomed out, turned and looked at the light, zoomed back in, we hold for 1 second, zoom back out, and now we're staring at the door. Okay, things are going well so far. Let's move forward on our timeline. I'm also going to give us a little more time here. In fact, my animation's 8 seconds long, so let's go ahead and drag this out to 8 seconds. Though, if you're working on your own animations, don't be surprised if you don't really know exactly how long your animation is going to be and you find yourself kind of setting this way out to the side. Though, if you've been doing, storyboarding and really planning out your animation and maybe even kind of working with a stopwatch to get an idea of when the camera is going to shift and do each thing, you'll probably have a good idea of how long it's going to be. So planning goes a long way toward making this whole process a lot easier. Now, between 3 seconds and 3:45, I want to fly over to the door. So we're going to select the movement track, and here at 3:451, I'll press enter, and of course we're going to snap over to 3:45 because of our snaps. And I'm just going to navigate our camera so that it's here in the doorway, like so. And of course you can test that out. Now, from 3:45 up to 4 seconds, I want to turn and look at the robots. Let's come up here to 4 seconds, press enter, and we'll turn, and I'll try to center this up as best I can, but we really kind of need to zoom in to get an idea of where he is. So just kind of rotate him around. That looks pretty good, though I'm probably off by quite a bit. Now, we want to zoom at the same time, so here, still at 4 seconds, I'm going to jump down to my FOV angle, press enter to place a key. Let's right-click, and I'm going to set the value. It's probably pretty low. Let me try 20. And even 20 is kind of far away, but it allows us to kind of angle our camera better than it was. So actually I need to jump back to my keyframe up here on movement and adjust it accordingly. And then we can come down here to FOV angle and just continue to edit till we get what we want. So let's grab the value. I'll pull that down to 5. And that might be actually a little bit too close. And the controls get really sensitive at this point. So let's pull that back just a little bit. Let's try a value of about 8. I think that'll look nice. So there we are. Now let's pull back and just test this. So we get to the door, we zoom out. Now that turn and zoom feels a little weird to me. It would be nice if we kind of turned and were already looking pretty much right at the robot by the time the zoom really got a chance to take effect. And part of that is because when we get here, we're already zooming, you see? We never put down a keyframe to hold our zoom factor after we zoomed out, so we need to take care of that next. So if we take a look down here in FOV angle, we're zoomed in, and let's just double check our value. Currently we're zoomed into a value of 45, and then we zoom out to a value of 90. We need to hold this value. So we could just come over here to 345, jump down to FOV angle, and press enter. Now let's right-click, set the value, and you see it's already interpolating. It was on its way down to its low next key. So let's pull this to 90 degrees again. And now that should solve the problem. So we turn, we look at the door, we fly to the door, and then zoom right in on our robot. So that's great. Now let's continue on. We see the robot. We're going to sit here and kind of stare at the robot long enough for him to get his little throat slit action in place. It doesn't even really need to complete. We just need to see most of it. Now, on the far end of things, when you're doing this kind of thing on your own, you might not know exactly how long that motion is going to take, especially if you're using animations that you did not create. In cases like that, you may need to go check out those animations, see how long they're actually going to take. You might want to take a moment and actually set up the animation for the robot, or just kind of guesstimate it, because you can always adjust it later. Now, I already know about the amount of time that we're going to need. So what we're going to do is slide up to about 5.3 seconds. And let me get us just a little bit closer than that. There we go. And press enter. So here we are at 5.3. And we're just going to stare at the robot for this long. So I need to put a key on movement and FOV angle just to kind of hold us there. Now, the next thing we're going to do is pull back. We're going to zoom back so that we're back in the doorway. So let me move the time slider forward. We're going to bring it up to 5.65. And we're going to drop a key on FOV angle. And I want to pull the angle back to 90. Now, this is kind of a trick that you can use or not use. It's entirely up to you. If you don't want to drop a key and actually place it, let me go ahead and just delete this. We could grab a keyframe where the field of view was already at 90 degrees, and then go to Edit and choose Duplicate Selected Keys. Hold down Control and drag this over to 5.65. And what that's going to do is zoom us out because it's using that same data. You can use that if you like. It's just one of those things I thought I'd pass your way. Now, what I'd like to do here is actually fly backwards. So it's not like we're turning and flying back to the camera. We're literally going to reverse what the camera has done to get us here. So here at 5.95, actually, excuse me, 5.65, we're going to get back in the doorway. So let's jump back to the movement key where we're just kind of sitting here in the doorway. With that keyframe selected in the movement track, I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate Selected Keys, and slide this guy to 5.65. So you see, we just kind of pull back to exactly where we were. Now I want to do this as we kind of pull all the way back to our original position. So we're going to bring an original position key to 5.65. Now, let's go ahead and find one where we're looking back at the switch. Actually, we could probably start here. No, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm kind of confusing myself, but I don't mean to. Let's go ahead and grab key 0, and I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate Selected Keys, and we're going to drag this all the way to 6.65. This way, we don't have to guess and try to remember exactly where we had the camera. We already had it where we wanted to, so we can just grab that information and copy it over. So now we pull back, and we're flying right back to where we were. Now, looking at that motion, it may make a little more sense to the player if we at least passed back by the light so they can kind of retrace the path the camera took. So I think I'm actually going to replace that. So let's delete out that key. So yeah, this is one of those things. When you're being a film director, you get to be picky. I'm going to grab our second key where we're looking up here at the light. And you saw me just zoom back a little bit. That's just with the mouse wheel. So we'll zoom back. And I'm going to go to Edit, Duplicate Selected Keys, and we'll drag this guy up to 5.65. Now let's see how that feels. Pull back. And there we are kind of looking in the general direction of our light. And now we can wrap things up by looking back down at the switch. So let's go ahead and grab key 0. We'll duplicate that, and I'm going to drag that out to about 745. So that should just rotate us down. So here we are, pulling back, and we look right back where we started. So we're literally playing that rotation animation kind of back the way we came. Now, 5.65, we zoomed back. We can maintain that zoom all the way to 745, all the way until right here. Now I'm going to switch to the FOV angle and press Enter just to hold that value. So the whole time we're panning back across everything, we're staying at this 90-degree field of view. Then I'll go all the way to a full 8 seconds, drop one last field of view key, right-click, set the value, right back down to, I think it was 35 where we started. So we're looking right back at the player just as things began. So now let's play back the whole thing. Stop, hit play. Light comes on, fly around the corner, look at the robot, pull back, hand it right back off to the player. So we follow the exact same path we took in. Now, when you're animating a camera on your own, you will probably find that you're going to try out a shot and then you'll play back through it and the timing may not feel right, so you're going to tweak times. Generally, this example is fairly simple in that I have the benefit of having all of my values kind of written down and I'm really just going over some notes. You won't have that, so be patient with yourself. Try out different shots. If something's not working, if it's moving too quickly, space your keyframes out a little bit. If motion doesn't feel like it's abrupt enough, then squeeze your keyframes together. Think about placement, think about what's in your shot. But remember that animating your camera is going to be one of those critical things to help you decide what does and does not need to be animated from one moment to the next. Save your level. That's going to wrap things up for this video. Thanks a lot. Okay, if you saved at the end of the last video, it took you right out of interpolation mode, which is a good thing. We don't really have anything to test at this point. All we've done is we have completed the motion of our camera, but if we take a look in Kismet, while our camera is connected to the action cam group, and that's all well and good, we don't have anything triggering this matinee, so really it's never going to happen. So what I want to do is come back here to our little switch, and let's put a trigger here. I'll just right-click on the wall, choose Add Actor, and let's pick on Add Trigger. Now this trigger is huge, so I'd like to make this a little bit small. Let's grab our draw scale fields. I'll grab the very first one, and we'll set this down to 0.3. Now, as soon as you do that, you're going to have to click on the trigger, otherwise you'll never notice the change, which is very fun. Now, let's tap the space bar, and we'll position this guy right here in front of our little switch. Now, we need to get this set up inside of Kismet, so I'm going to open the Kismet editor. Let's right-click. And we'll choose New Event using Trigger 0, and this will be a used event, because we actually want the player to walk up and use this switch. I'm going to leave my max trigger count at 1. This is not the kind of switch I really want the player to use an awful lot. And we'll just take the used and plug it into play. Now, if we were to test things out right now, there is a little bit of a problem. So here we are. Hit use. Nothing's happening. Am I doing something wrong? No, you're not. The problem is that while we have been animating our camera, while everything is doing what it's supposed to do, we don't have anything in Matinee that's telling us to take the view away from the player and give it off to this camera. To do that, we have to add a director's track. A director track is kind of like a camera switcher. That's really all it is. It's a way that you can say, all right, go to camera 1, now camera 2, now camera 3. You get to become literally like a film director. And so what I'm going to do is come over here to my group track list inside of Matinee, right-click, and choose New Director Group. Each Matinee can only have one director group. Keep that rule in mind. Now it already has a director track, and animating this is extremely easy. All we're going to do is select the director, press Enter, and it asks Cut to Group. What group do you want to look at? And generally it's assuming that you're looking through a camera. So we'll set this to Action Cam. Click OK, and now, throughout the duration of our animation, we are looking through Action Cam, which is labeled. If we had other cameras here inside the group, we could switch to those at any given point and take a look at the action from different vantage points. All we'd have to do is set up alternate cameras. Now let's test it out at this point. So I'll close, right-click, play from here. And we are able to view our camera. So let's take a look at our next problem. The next problem is that one, if we use this, actually what I'm going to do is restart the level. One is that we still see the HUD, and the other one, so you might have seen the HUD, we still have crosshairs flying around with us. The other one, watch this. When I use the trigger, I can still move the robot around. So yeah, I've actually managed to run him pretty much back to where the robot is without even looking at the view, which, by the way, is luck. I was pretty sure that's where I was, but I didn't know for sure. That's an issue. We don't want the player to be gone when the camera gets back. We want the player to pretty much stand still. Also, we want the HUD to go away. Fortunately, in Kismet, there is a single sequence object, single node, which will solve all of these problems at once. Let's take a look. I'm going to open up Kismet. And I'm going to take my trigger underscore 0 used and kind of pick it up here for just a moment. And I'm going to right click, choose new action, come down to toggle, and you'll see toggle cinematic mode. Now let's take a look at the properties for toggle cinematic mode. It's got a bunch of visibility switches as well as some other things as well. So do you want to be able to see dead bodies? Do you want to disable any input from the player, disable movement, disable turning? Do you want to hide any drop pickups? Do you want to hide away the HUD? Do you want to hide the player? So all sorts of cool stuff so you can switch on and off. I'm going to leave the player visible. So I'm going to uncheck hide player. Everything else is just fine because that keeps us from moving. It hides away the HUD. So as soon as we use this trigger, I'm going to enable cinematic mode. Well, that's perfect, but let's try it real quick and see the next problem. So we fly over. We still see a HUD, which is a little bit of an issue. But also, actually, hang on, something didn't actually get connected. Let me try that again. Oh, you know what? This is my bad. I didn't give it a target. That's embarrassing. All right, you're allowed to laugh at me. Creating your cinematic toggle mode, or I'm sorry, toggle cinematic mode node is only half the battle. We have to actually point out who it's going to affect. So what I'm going to do is right-click here in space, come down to new variable, and let's choose player and pick on player. Now I'm going to switch off all players, so this is just for the player that's in the level. This is not a multiplayer map anyway. And we'll connect that to the target. And really, I did that on purpose to help point out to you, or yeah, something like that. Now, let's hit the button. Now notice our HUD is gone, so that's nice. However, now if I try, I'm trying like anything to move, tapping buttons, clicking my mouse, nothing. That's because in Kismet, we enabled cinematic mode, but we never disabled it. So what I'm going to do now is take my matinee and run an output from when it was completed to disable, excuse me. So we're enabling it when the switch is used. As soon as our matinee animation is complete, we'll then disable cinematic mode. Now let's try one last time. All right, so I can't move. We have no HUD. And our player is still waiting for us. Then we get control back, and we can continue. So we've taken a look at a lot of different things. We have set up the trigger, which causes our animation to play. We've added in a director track so we can cut over to the camera that we animated. And we've set up cinematic mode to keep the player from interfering in the course of our movie. Now, save your map. That's going to wrap things up. And then when we come back, we'll move on and take a look at the next issue we need to solve. All right, so our camera now looks away from the player. It flies around the corner, looks at the robot. We've got cinematic mode in place. A lot of things are already going for us. Now we need to work on our next problem. Now when our camera pulls back, when it goes into its little movie, the next thing it looks at is this light. So the light is the next thing I'd like to animate. Now the effect for the light is twofold. There's the material for the actual static mesh itself, which is a material instance constant that we've applied to this mesh. And there's also a single light that we have to actually animate its value on. So we have two different things we have to tackle. The first thing I want to tackle is just going to be the material. Now if we take a look at this mesh, just double click it, let's expand static mesh actor, static mesh component, expand rendering. Currently, if we take a look at the materials property, we see that there is a material instance constant called fluorescent light underscore instance applied. And if we find this in the content browser, you can see it here. I can double click it. Its parent is MLT light SM fluorescent 01, and it has a single vector parameter of light color, which has got it set to off right now. Now what I want to do is animate this using matinee so that we can cause it to kind of flicker and then come to life. Now this requires that we have some sort of an actor in our level that can kind of act as a go-between between matinee and the material itself. Matinee can't talk to this material. Matinee only talks to actors that can get plugged into it. So we need an actor. So I'm going to open up the content browser, jump over to the actor classes browser, and if you take a look, you'll see the material instance actor, who is here just to help us talk to material instance constants. I'm going to right click on the wall, choose add material instance actor here, and this thing is huge. So I'm going to pull it down a little bit so it's not quite so in our way. Let me take its draw scale. That first field, we'll set that to 0.5. Then click on the icon, which will actually, you know what? Let's go even smaller. Let's try 0.3, 0.2. There we go. That's all I wanted. Something kind of small. Now, these can be placed anywhere in your level, but obviously it makes a lot of sense to leave them near whatever object they're affecting. So I'll leave this guy right here. Now, we've got our actor. We just need to get it associated with Matinee. So I'm going to jump back into Kismet. Let's double-click our Matinee sequence, and then I'll close Kismet to get it out of the way. Underneath my Action Cam group, I'm going to right-click and create a new empty group, which I will call Light Material. So there it is. If we jump back into Kismet for just a moment, we'll see that we now have a Light Material group, which is connected to our Material Instance Actor. Perfect. Okay, now if we select this group, we now need to add to it a property to control our material. And if we take a look, we see Add New Vector Material Param Track. So we click there. Now this isn't enough. We've added our material instance, we've got it associated with Kismet. The problem is that we need our Material Instance Actor to be associated with this particular material. So what I'm going to do is select my Material Instance Actor, press F4 to open its properties, and you'll see the Material Instance Actor category. Expand that, and it's just asking for a material instance. So let's open up the content browser. Make sure we have our material instance selected, and we'll just click the Use Selection in Content Browser button. So now everything should be nice and linked up and ready for animation. So now all we need to do is animate. Let's jump down here to our vector param. Now if we take a look, there is a particular moment in time where we are looking at this light to watch it switch on. So if we jump over to our action cam by clicking the little camcorder button for the group, we see that that's between second 1 and 2. So if I get Unreal Matinee kind of out of the way, as a matter of fact, let me demaximize the viewport and we'll just do it that way again. So for 1 full second, we're staring right at it. So what we really need to do here is animate our light to switch on and kind of flicker during this 1 second interval. So right here at 1 second, I'm going to make sure I have my vector material param selected and press enter. Now he's going to retain his original settings, which right now is 0, 0, 0. So basically we've just animated him to stay black all the way up to this point. Now I'm going to slide the time slider forward to 1.15 or thereabouts. Doesn't have to be precise because it'll snap when we press enter, but I got it anyway. So let's press enter. Now if I choose right click, you'll notice you can't set the value here. We're going to have to set this value using the curve editor. So what I'm going to do is select our vector material param. I'm going to click on the display curve in curve editor button. Is this little tiny black square here at the end of the track. Now this shows our keyframes. So what I'm going to do is zoom in to our second keyframe, just using the mouse wheel, by the way. Now if you take a look here inside of our actual tab up here at the top that shows our curve, there are 3 little buttons. There's red, green, and blue, and that's allowing us to show each one of these channels individually. What I'm going to do is click on the green channel and the blue channel, and that will hide those away. Now I can click on just the red channel's keyframe, right click on it, and set its value. We're going to set red to 1.15 and press enter, and now we can fit that into the view by clicking Fit View to All. And now we see that we're animating up in red. So let's go ahead and take care of the next one. Now I'm going to hide away the red channel and just show the blue channel. I'm sorry, the green channel, excuse me. We'll select this keyframe, right click, and choose Set Value. This one we're going to set to 2.13. And again, we'll fit this into the view. And there we go. Now let's hide away green and just show blue. Select the second key, right click and set value, and we'll set this to 3.13. Okay, now if we show everybody, we can fit them all. Actually, let's just make sure that there we go. So now you see all 3 of those curves going up like so. All right, so now at this point, we should have some animation. So let's double check, see how everything's going. Everything is connected properly. Now, if we take a look at our vector material param, the reason, here's the thing, we actually have animation here, but we're not seeing a result yet, and that's because we have yet to specify our param name. Our vector material param can change any values we want it to, but until we actually say what parameter, what name are we adjusting, nothing's going to work. Now, if you might recall, actually, let me just show you so I don't have to worry about anybody's memory. If we jump into the content browser, if we expand fluorescent light, you see that we have a parameter called light color. So if I close this, I can come in, select my vector material param, set our param name to light color, and as soon as I press enter, now check it out, we have animation. So our light is flicking on. Now that may look really slow as I drag, but we are really zoomed in on the timeline. So if I press play right now, in fact, what I can do is I can play the loop section, which is currently set to loop between seconds 1 and 2. And you see, it just kind of flickers and comes right on. So we have 2 keyframes. Technically, we have animation. We start in an off position, and we go back to the on position. Now, what I'd like to do, instead of just having to recreate those same keys over and over, I just want to duplicate some keys. So let's grab our first keyframe here on the light, and we'll go to Edit, Duplicate Selected Keys, hold down Control, and I want you to drag this over here to value 1.2. So here we are at 0, we flick on, and then back off again. Now we're going to grab our on, we're going to duplicate that, so Edit, Duplicate Selected Keys, and we're going to drag this to 1.25. So you see we kind of slowly come on, and then we flicker. Let's just kind of play back through. Okay. We still got a little ways to go here, so let's grab one back. Now this is key 2. You'll notice up here in the curve editor that it's a trough, so to speak, so the light is back in its off position. Let's choose Edit, Duplicate Selected Keys, hold down Control, and we're going to drag this up to about 1.35, so we get kind of a lull here. Then we'll grab our next on key back, and we'll duplicate that. And we'll slide this up to 1.40, and you can see what this is doing. We've got on, off, just creating our nice little flickering wave pattern. Let's grab our off again, and we'll duplicate and drag this up to about 1.5. Grab one of the on keys, and it really doesn't matter which one you grab. We'll duplicate that, and we'll drag that up to 1.6. Grab off, duplicate, we'll drag up to 1.65. Grab our next on, edit, duplicate, and we'll drag up to 1.7. Now let's just play back through this. So I'm just going to click the loop section button, and we just get a little bit of a flicker, and then the light stays on. So now let's hit stop twice to go all the way to the beginning, and I'm going to put this viewport in game mode, and let's just play through once. The light flickers on, and everything is good. So now we can stop, we can get out of matinee, and we're set to go. So we have now animated the light switch or animated the material for a light switch for the actual light tube. That is going to wrap up this lesson. Be sure to save your work, and then we'll continue from here. Alright, so we have our animated material, and now we just need to set up an actual light that will light up our level. So we're going to bring in a special actor to do this. I'm going to open up the content browser and then switch to the Actor Classes tab. And let me actually close everything up so you can see exactly how to get to this light. You'll see the light group. Go ahead and expand that. Underneath you'll see point light. If you expand that, you'll see point light toggleable. Now with that selected, we can close out the Actor Classes browser, right-click on the wall, and choose Add Point Light Toggleable here. Now this is a dynamic actor, so we can change it so that it affects the actual level in real time. So what I'm going to do is double click this guy and set up a few settings. Let's expand the light category, expand light component, expand light component again, and we're going to take its brightness and set its brightness to 0. Just because that's going to be the property we're going to animate. So in effect, we've switched the light off. We're not going to use a toggle to enable and disable the light. We're actually going to smoothly animate that brightness going up and down. Now, we can also set a couple of other things as well. You're welcome to change the color of the light if you want. I'm going to open up point light component, and we'll pull the radius down to, say, 512. And let me jump in. We'll just set the brightness back up so I can test that. That's pretty good. Just kind of a real general light. It doesn't need to go very far. Really, just the fact that it's animating is enough for demonstration purposes. So we have our light. Its properties are set. Now let's jump into Kismet. Double click on our matinee sequence, and now I'll close Kismet to open up a little bit of screen space. Now with our light selected, I'm going to right click. We'll choose Add New Empty Group, and I'm going to name this Light Actor. And if you want, you can check back in Kismet, and you'll see that it has indeed been attached. So now we can clean all of that up. Okay, now, to animate the brightness property, we need to select our new Light Actor group, right-click it, and we're going to bring in a float property track. Now, as soon as you do this, a window is going to pop it up asking you which property you want to animate. So from the drop-down, scroll down, and you'll see brightness. Now, if you can't read the actual value, like maybe if it cuts off a little bit, you can take this window and expand it out, and then it makes it a little easier to see. Just thought I'd throw that one out there. So let's select brightness, click OK, and there we go. We have a new brightness track. So now I'm going to zoom in right in between the 1 and 2 second marks. And we could actually use the keyframes of our animated material to figure out where to put our keyframes. So if I click on the first keyframe from our animated material, we can now jump down to the brightness track, press Enter, right-click, and just double-check the value. It should be 0, and it is, which is good. So now moving down, we can just click on the next track, make sure we switch down to brightness, press Enter. Now let's right-click and set value, and we're going to set this up to 0.8. We might actually want to go back and change the color of that light to cool it off a little bit, but that's not a big deal and has nothing to do with animating, so maybe I'll just take care of that later. Now, I'm going to jump to the next key again, so really I'm just making sure these keys coincide. By clicking on these keyframes that we already animated from the material, you see that we're just jumping the time slider, but each time you click on one, make sure you jump back down to the brightness track before you press Enter. So now we'll set this back to 0. Now you might find at this point that it's a little bit faster to start duplicating keys. So we can grab this key where the light is on, go up to Edit, Duplicate Selected Keys, and then just slide that over to 1.25. You can do it whichever way you like. If you like just dropping keys, by all means do that. Something you could do is just come over here and systematically drop keys so that they coincide. So I'm just clicking on each keyframe, jumping back down to the brightness track and pressing Enter, keyframe, brightness, Enter. And once you have all your keys down, you can just swap them out. So here we're off, here we're on, here we're off. So let's just right click, set the value to 0. Here's the next one where we're off. Right click, set the value to 0. I think I missed one actually. Make sure, yeah, I missed that. So let's right click, set that value to 0. That's what I hit Enter instead of 0. So hit Enter and then 0. It helps if you know how to use a keyboard, or at least that's what I've been told. Now let's right click, go back to set value, set that to 0, and we're back to 0 here. Oh, I got them reversed, didn't I? Yep, we need to set that guy back to 0.8. 0.8, and then 0, and there we go. So now the actual light actor is flickering in time with our material. Now, real quick, let's switch our viewport over here into game mode. Let's pull back, and I'll just hit play once to play through. And our light is switching on, so that's awesome. Now, there's one more thing we could do at this point. We could go ahead and add a sound effect so that when we switch on our light, we actually get some sort of audio playback as well. So here inside our light actor group, I want you to right click again, and we're going to add a new soundtrack. Now you could put this soundtrack anywhere. It could go in the light material group, it could go in the light actor group. You could even make a separate group for it if you were so inclined. But I'm going to go ahead and hide it underneath the light actor group. And right here at the 1 second mark, we need to find a sound that we want. So let's move our time slider. I'm going to jump over to the content browser. Now I already have the sound selected, but that's like cheating. So let's just clear everything out, click all assets, and what I want you to search for up here is elevator. And if we scroll down, you'll see elevator 01 start cue. Go ahead and select that. Close out the content browser. Select your soundtrack here inside of Unreal Matinee and press enter, and there you go. It automatically drops in that sound cue, and it shows you the duration of the playback as well. So now if you hit play to test it, you can hear that. And it's got kind of a nice whirring up sound, like there's some sort of electricity being fed over to that light. So that is going to wrap up the animation of our light. Go ahead and close out of Matinee, save your level, and then we will continue. Thanks a lot. All right, it is time for us to animate our little robot friend doing his little throat slit taunt at the player. Now to do this, we need to get him associated with the Matinee, so I'll select the robot, expand Kismet, select Matinee, right-click on it, and just choose Open Unreal Matinee. Now let's close the Kismet editor in the background just to give us some nice screen space. Now with the robot still selected, I'm going to right-click on my group track list and create a new empty group, which I'm going to name Enemy Robot. Now our Enemy Robot group has a property. Without even adding a track, you'll see a group anim sets property. This is listening out for any anim sets that are going to be used to animate a skeletal mesh. So what we need to do is add a new slot to this. So over on the right hand side, you'll see a little green cross button that says add a new item. Click on that, and then we get our first index, which is 0. Let's go ahead and open up the content browser, and we need to locate an anim set. It's real easy to search for these. Let's just go ahead and sort down by anim sets, and only a few really come with UDK. Among them, you'll see K, anim human, base male. So go ahead and select that, and we'll close out the content browser, and let's just click on the Use Selected Object in Content Browser button, little green arrow, and there we go. We have our anim set assigned to our character, which is great. Now we need an anim track to help us control what the character's doing. So I'm going to right-click on the Enemy Robot group, and you see an anim control track. Go ahead and add that. And really, that's pretty much all there is to it. Now, we need to adjust the camera. So I'm just going to slide down the timeline until we're looking right at the robot so we can get an idea of where we're animating. So we're starting at about 4 seconds, and we're pulling back a little after 5. Now, if you need to know what animations you have at your disposal, it's really easy to do. All you need to do is open up the content browser and double-click on the anim set in question. Now, there are a lot of tabs here. This is the animation set editor, anim set editor. And there are several different buttons and menus, and it can be a little bit frightening, but if you're just here to preview stuff, simply take a look here on the left-hand side and switch over to the anim tab. And now we can actually kind of size some things around to give us a little bit more room. This is a list of all of the different animations that exist inside this anim set. And you see there's a bunch of them. There's a human female idol, which on a guy model looks just hilarious. He's just kind of standing there with his hip out like he's just all that in a bag of chips. But we can scroll down. Here's the feigned death get up. So, whoa, which looks really cool. But if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we see the taunts. So we've got, like, bring it on. I do that, like, every day. The hula hoop, I don't do that every day. If I did, I wouldn't tell you anyway. And then if we come all the way down, we've got the slit throat, which is what we're going to make our robot do. So just use this as a way to preview the animations you're going to use. So now let's close out of the anim set editor. I will close out of the content browser as well. And then here at about 4 seconds, let's go ahead and just press enter in our anim set, and it's going to ask us what anim sequence we want to use. So now that we've tested them all, we know that we want to do taunt UB slit throat. Click OK, and there we go. So now you'll see he's already waiting in the appropriate pose, and I'm scrubbing through real slow. He does his slit throat, and then pulls back. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this keyframe back just a little bit. So he's already kind of maybe starting to go into the motion right as we catch sight of him. So holding down Control, I'm going to slide this keyframe to the left a little bit. So now, as the camera is even getting there, I'm going to try to move Matinee as much out of the way as I can. We'll just pull back a little bit. As we actually get here, he's already going into the motion of slitting his throat, and then as soon as he's done, we're pulling back. Now, technically, he's freezing at that point. So, like, if we switch out of the director group and just have a look, so it's like he's completely frozen, and then he does his throat slit, and then he just freezes again. But because our camera never really sees that, that's fine. We don't need to worry about it. So let's take a quick preview, see what this looks like. I'm going to hit stop, and let's hit play. Actually, you know what? Let's stop again. Let me go into game mode because it looks so much better. And here we go. He does a little throat slit, and then we fly back, which is perfect. That's exactly what I want. Okay, the last thing that we could do is maybe set up some sort of a sound clip, something that this guy could say to us, and there are a few robot voices here that we can mess with. So I'm going to open up the content browser, and let's search. Actually, let me come over here to my search line. Let's type in corrupt, and we've got acknowledged. I think the one that I want is unit in position because that just sounds so ominous. So here's a bot status corrupt unit in position.
Unit in position.
See, that's just freaky to me.
Unit in position.
So let's use that, but currently we have kind of a rough time using it because it's not in a sound cue. So what I'm going to do is create a simple sound cue that we can use. So let's clear all this stuff out. Actually, I've got one put together. I'll show you how I made it real quick. So we just right-clicked here inside my new package, and we created a new sound cue. And what we got, if I open this up in the sound cue editor, which I'm going to do just by using right-click and choosing Edit using sound cue editor, all we got was a little blank view here, and I selected our sound bite, the little sound we just found where he says unit in position, selected that in the content browser, right-clicked, and you can add that from the menu and connect it straight in. Now, there are actually some lessons over using the sound cue editor. It's a little bit outside the scope here, but it's a very, very easy connection setup process. So
Unit in position.
So now that's all taken care of. We've got a sound cue for that. So let's set this up so that right as he does the throat slit, he actually says that. So here we are with the enemy robot. I'm going to right-click on the group, and we will add a new soundtrack to this group. And let's say right about here, we'll press Enter, and there's our bot voice cue. So now let's give this a quick test.
Unit in position.
Awesome. So now he's talking to us. With that, our robot is all set up. Let's go ahead and close out of Unreal Matinee. Go ahead and save your level, and then we will continue from here. All right, so we're back. We're still working on our cinematic sequence. The next problem that I'd like to address is the fact that our robot is still visible when we launch the level. We need to be able to hide him away when the level starts, bring him back during the course of our animation. Then we're going to destroy him at the end of the animation and spawn in an AI bot. Now, before we handle any of this, there's something really important I want to point out to you. In between videos, I rebuilt the lighting and something happened. So what I'm going to do is show you what happened so that you'll be aware of it if you ever see it on your end. Take a look at the light. Well, don't worry about the fact that the material's on. That's something that I plan on dealing with later. But actually, watch this real quick. Notice the light bulb effect didn't work. If you missed it, here you go one more time. No light bulb. All I did was rebuild lighting, and it killed my light. If this happens to you, it's only because we didn't throw a single checkbox earlier, and in a way I'm glad that it worked out this way because it allows me to make a special point about the checkbox. If we double-click on our light, expand light component, and then expand light component again, there is a force dynamic light checkbox. make sure that that is checked. Now, this will require that we rebuild lighting once again, which I'm not actually going to do at this point. We'll deal with our robot problems first, and then in between our videos, I'll rebuild lighting one more time. But once you check that, your light will start working once again. Okay, so back over here to the robot. Currently, if we launch the level, we can see the robot, and obviously that's a problem. So what I'm going to do is just select the robot. Solving this one's easy. We'll just expand the display group under its properties, check hidden. Also make sure you do the same thing for his link gun, because if you forget that, he'll just be a floating link gun. Alright, so now he's hidden. Now the next thing we need to do is show him so that he can be seen during animation. So let's open up Kismet. And let's go ahead and double click on Matinee. And I'll close Kismet out of the background. What I want you to do is come over here to your group track list, and on the left-hand side you have a little scroll bar. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom, select my enemy robot group, right-click on it, and we're going to add a new event track. An event track allows you to create outputs on your Matinee sequence that are going to fire at some point along your Matinee's timeline. So for instance, currently my time slider is at 0. With the event track selected, I'm going to press enter, and it asks for an event name. Let's call this Show Robot. Alright, so now we have a keyframe named Show Robot. But check this out. If we open up Kismet once again, we now have an output named Show Robot. This output will send out a signal to whatever nodes are connected to it the moment the animation starts, or whatever the timing of that keyframe happens to be. If we moved it halfway along the timeline, it would take place halfway through the animation. So now let's close out of Kismet for a moment. We're going to add one more just to the end of our animation. So press enter, and we'll call this one Destroy Spawn. Actually, well, alright, well, yeah, Destroy Spawn, because we're actually trying to do several things at once. You can name it anything you want. You can name it Popcorn and Baseball if you wanted to. Alright, so now with those two, if we take a look, again, back in Kismet, we now have outputs for each one. Now all we need to do is connect in the appropriate Kismet nodes to deal with the showing of the robot, then destroying the robot, and then at the same time we're going to spawn in an AI bot that will come in and fight the player. So let's start off with just showing the robot. Currently it's set to hidden, so if we close this out and we play our level, there is no robot. That's what we fixed when we just set our hidden checkbox. However, now we need him to show when we play back the animation. So I'm going to jump back into Kismet. I'm going to right-click right here next to my Matinee, choose New Action. Let's come down to Toggle, and I'll grab a Toggle Hidden. Let's move this over. We're going to take Show Robot and connect that to Unhide. Now we have to give this a target, and fortunately for us, we can just take the target and plug it into the skeletal mesh actor, which is already plugged into the enemy robot track. That's pretty easy. However, if we give this a quick test, there's a couple of things. So if we take a look, obviously there was no robot back there. Now, there's our light, which is working.
Unit in position.
And now the robot's showing, which is good. Now, however, when we run back through, he's still here, which is kind of a problem. But also, check it out, he's not holding his gun. Now, you might not have noticed that when we actually did the animation, so just watch it one more time and look for his gun when we play back.
Unit in position.
No gun. So we need to make sure that gun shows visible as well. So back over here in Kismet, I'm actually going to take Kismet and kind of slide it out of the way. We're going to select the gun that the robot is holding, and then back over inside of Kismet, I'm going to right-click on my target input and choose New Object Var using Skeletal Mesh Actor 3. Now we are unhiding both of those objects. Fantastic, that was easy. So if we were to test that out, he would now be holding his gun, but at the end of the animation we need to destroy him. So I'm going to right-click, choose New Action, let's come over to Actor, and there is a Destroy Kismet sequence, which will just simply connect Destroy Spawn to the input of that, and now we have to give this targets as well. So we're going to connect this to Skeletal Mesh Actor 2 and Skeletal Mesh Actor 3. Now this I really will test out. So let's jump into the level, run back to the back, use our switch, lights working,
Unit in position.
he's holding his gun. Now if we come around the corner, he's gone. Where did he go? He's been destroyed, which is great. That's exactly what we need. Now, at this point, it's time for us to spawn our AI bot. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to right-click, come to New Action, come to Actor, and we're going to bring in a new Actor Factory. Now, this is a great big node that can do a lot of different things. It can spawn any kind of actor you want it to. What we're going to do is take Destroy Spawn and plug this into Spawn Actor. Now, it needs a couple of things plugged into it. We need a new spawn point, and we're going to need to keep track of the object that we spawn, but I'll talk about that just a little bit later. For now, let's just focus on where this guy's going to be spawned, which is our spawn point. I'm going to close out Kismet for just a moment, and it's really close to the player start. So we could just use that. If you wanted to, you could create a new actor here in the middle of the level just to spawn him out, but for simplicity's sake, we'll just use the player start. So with that selected, I'll come out to Kismet again, right-click on the spawn point input, and choose Create New Object Var using Player Start 2. Now, what are we going to spawn? This is where we have to set up the properties for our Actor Factory. So we'll select this. Take a look at your factory property. Currently, it has nothing in it. We need to add a new object, so I'm going to go all the way to the end of the property on the right-hand side. You'll see a little blue triangle labeled Create a New Object. Click on that, and we're going to grab a UT Actor Factory AI. Now, this has got several different properties inside of it. First off is the controller class. Go ahead and leave this set to UT Bot. That'll give you that UT Bot AI, which is going to try to kill you. Make sure you check Force Deathmatch AI. Give default inventory. You can go ahead and do if you want. We'll just go ahead and leave it alone right now. The Pawn class needs to be set, so we're going to grab that and make sure we select UT Pawn. Now, if we wanted to give him anything special in his inventory, like a special weapon, we have an inventory list, and you can click Add New Item, and then you get index 0 the first time you click on it. I'm just going to set this to UT Web Link Gun. So he's got a link gun. All right, so now let's close this out, and let's try out our level. Let's just see what that got for us. Lights working.
Unit in position.
And I heard him spawn, actually. Oh, he's shooting at us. Once he's seen us, he's smart enough to come get us.
First blood.
Yeah, and then we get the announcer telling us that we got first blood, which is great and all. We can roll down the mouse wheel and grab the physics gun and throw his body around in victory. Okay, so now we've got our bot spawning. Now I'm going to stop everything right here, because really that's a pretty good chunk of everything we need to have happen. So let's go ahead and save at this point, and then we'll move forward from here. All right, we're continuing on with our cinematic sequence, and technically at this point, our matinee cinematic work is done. We've already animated our robot, we've animated our camera, we've worked on our lighting, our materials. All of this has been animated. Everything else we're going to do is going to be some Kismet work in the background to make this cinematic sequence fit more cleanly with our gameplay. So for starters, what we're going to do is take our little spawned robot and run him into the room where the player is now sitting. So you're going to watch the movie, the robot's going to do his throat slit. Of course, then we hide out the skeletal mesh robot and swap it out for an AI bot, but we need to get the bot into the room. Now, if you have ever done any work with bots and AI inside of Unreal in the past, your very first thought may be to drop down some path nodes and allow those to guide the robot to the player's position. Here's the problem with that. This level has a couple of things. One, it has a rocket launcher located up here, and it has a vehicle located over here. And giving our robot that much freedom, as soon as we set up some paths, the first thing he's going to try to do is just run for this vehicle, which is a little anticlimactic, and it means if we come around the corner, he's going to try to pelt us with scorpion fire. if we disable this, and disabling the vehicle is very easy, just simply double click it. And if we come under UT Vehicle Factory, you'll see the disabled checkbox. Just make sure that that's on, and then nobody can use the vehicle, which is fine in confines this small. Now, if we were to set up some path nodes to guide the robot in this far, as soon as he detected that he could find a way to get up here, he would ignore the player entirely, and he would just run up here and get the rocket launcher. I don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do instead is use another system to force the robot to run into the room. So let's take a look at how we can do this. I'm going to jump into Kismet. And here's our actor factory. Now, this is what is responsible for spawning our bot into the world. And we can take the bot as soon as it's spawned and store it into a variable. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to right-click on the spawned output and choose Create New Object Variable. And there we go. Now, at the time of actually writing this out, is at the time that we're building this script, this variable is empty. During game time, whatever object is spawned, in our case a UT bot, will get placed into this variable. Now we can pass that information onto another node. So right next to our actor factory sequence object, I'm going to right click, choose New Action, Actor, I'm going to go down to AI, and we'll grab Move to Actor. Now I'm going to take the finished output of our actor factory and plug that into the Move to Actor. Now, Move to Actor is looking for a little bit of information. First off, it wants a target. That's basically asking what object is going to be moving, and that's going to be whatever bot was spawned. So we'll just plug that right into our variable. Next, it's looking for a destination. So to create the destination, we can create any actor in our scene. Anything that's placeable can be used. So what I'm going to do is use a placeholder actor of a note. So let's open up the content browser, jump over to actor classes, and right at the topmost level, you'll see a note actor. Click on that. Let's right click, say here on the floor, and choose add note here. Now you can pick this guy up out of the floor, but leave him pretty low. If you get him up too high, the robot won't be able to see him as a navigation point anymore. So I'm just kind of sliding him down until the little backboard of the notepad is just kind of sticking down through the floor. So this is note 0. Let's go back into Kismet. I'm going to right click on our destination input and choose new object var using note 0. Let's close and give this a quick test. Just see what we get.
Unit in position.
Now, if everything worked, we should be able to wait just a second, and as soon as we round the corner, that bot should be right up here by the door. And he is. So we got him really close to the entrance. However, let me point something out to you. So you might be thinking, well, that's great. Why don't we just take this, and we'll put it exactly where we want our bot to go. Right up in here, I suppose. Now we'll try this out.
Unit in position.
And we'll just wait for the robot to round the corner. And he's not here yet. And he's still not here. In fact, he's still sitting way back there in the back. This is a very rudimentary form of navigation. This is, really just grabbing your robot by the brain and saying, hey, run to this guy. So what we got to do is kind of walk him in. So we're going to slide this back. Get it right about here. Now I'm going to duplicate this object off. So let's hold down Alt, and we'll slide this over. Now, doing this will cause me to have to adjust some of my node actors over inside of Kismet. Because now, if we jump back over to Kismet, we're now running to note 1 instead of note 0. Basically, when you duplicate an object using the Alt key, what's happening is that the duplicate is left at the location of the original object, and you're actually dragging the original object with you. Now, they're nice enough to set it up so that Kismet will update, but that's not exactly what we wanted in this case. I'm going to grab my Move to Actor and just hit Control-C, Control-V, and we'll duplicate that. Notice it's already connected to a couple of things. It's already connected to note 1, which is fine. In fact, I can unhook that guy over here. Actually, let's just unhook everything. We'll keep everything really straightforward for now. So what we're going to do is say we move to the first actor. When we're finished with that, move to the second actor. Now let's make sure we've got exactly who's who set up. So if we select this first actor, this is note 1. So the first guy we want to run to is note 1. The next guy we want to run to is note 0, so we'll select that. Jump back over to Kismet, right-click on Destination, and there we go. So now we're running to note 1, then to note 0. Now we can just take the target, plug it in right over here, and we should be good to go. Now let's try this out.
Unit in position.
And we should see him run into the room, and here he is. But here's the great thing. He doesn't see us yet. Shh, be quiet. We can sneak past him, he'll completely ignore us, or we can just walk right up behind him and blam! Okay, so he's kind of dumb in that unless he sees you, he's not going to attack. Well, we can fix that too. If we jump into Kismet, see, like, the hard part's done. We've got him into the room. Let's go into Kismet, though, and take a look. Our move to actor sequence objects have a look at input. So we can actually tell the robot to look at something, or in this case, somebody. Let's grab our player 0 variable that we actually had connected up here to our cinematic mode. I'm going to hit Control C, fly over here to the move to actor, and hit Control V, and we'll connect that in like so. Now let's try this out. So right click, play from here. Now when he rounds the corner, as he runs to that second point, he should be looking right at us, which means he's going to immediately open fire. And there he goes.
First blood.
Immediately trying to kill us. Now, the cool thing about doing it this way is that we don't run any risk of him ever thinking that he can run up here and grab the rocket launcher. We're going to leave that to be our little secret, which is going to be really important here in an upcoming video. For now, though, go ahead and save your work, and we'll continue on after this. Alright, so this is going to be a short little video. There's just a couple of little things I want to fix that are driving me a little crazy. If we jump into our level, first off, see our light up here? It's off right now, and that's good. If we use our switch, it switches on. Now if we immediately jump out and then try our level out again, he's back on. Now, generally speaking, this wouldn't be much of a problem if you were making the game as something that you'd send out to a player, but just to be on the safe side, we need to fix that. So what I'm going to do is right-click, grab a new event, and let's do level loaded. I'm just going to drag this up here all by itself for just a moment. And I'm going to right-click again, choose new action, and come down to material instance. And we're going to grab set vector param. Now we need to feed this the material instance that's plugged into our light. If you don't know what that is or where it is, an easy way to find it is to grab the static mesh in question, double click it, expand static mesh actor, static mesh component, expand rendering, expand materials, and then click the little magnifying glass button next to the material. So now we have that selected. Now let's go back into Kismet, select our set vector param, and we'll click the little green Use Selected Object in Content Browser button, and now that's plugged in. Now we just need the param name, which in our case is light color. So when the level is loaded and visible, we're going to set the light color parameter in our material instance to black, which is the default color. So now if we test that out, the light's off when we start off, and it's always going to be off when we start off, which is good. The other thing, and actually, let me just demonstrate this too, because this is driving me crazy. So light comes on, that's awesome. Cool camera flash, deadly robot coming to kill us. Listen when I kill this guy.
First blood.
We get the first blood announcement, which is all well and good. It's just, this isn't a deathmatch environment, so I don't want to listen to that. So what we're going to do is nullify that. We're going to switch off announcements. Let's jump back into Kismet. Right here next to our level loaded event, I'm going to right click, go to new action, scroll down to voice and announcements, and choose toggle announcements. Now we're going to simply connect that from the level loaded invisible to disable, and now announcements are switched off. So let's give that a quick test.
Unit in position.
And there we go. Now, no more voice telling us that we drew first blood. I don't mind the little screen thing. That's all well and good. But now the announcer switched off. So that's really all I wanted to do here. So we'll leave things that simple. And in the next video, we're going to take a look at how to make that fight a bit more intense by giving our robot an interesting way to manage his health. I'll leave it at that, and I'll see you in the next video. We're going to make the battle with the robot at the end of our sequence a little more interesting by setting up a system such that our robot will heal itself back to full health every 1/2 of a second. Now, this is kind of an interesting setup. It's very self-indulgent. I'm doing it just because it's fun and it's with Kismet. It doesn't have that much to do with the actual cinematic sequence, though because we had so much build-up with our cinematic sequence, it just seems like that fight should be a little bit harder. Now, the way we're going to set this up is that, as I said, every 1/2 a second, the robot's going to get full health. That means that our little pea shooter, the little kind of sub-link gun that we get at the beginning of the level, which is actually worse than a real link gun, is not going to have the firepower to take out this robot. We're going to have to go get the rocket launcher, and even then, only a direct hit will solve our problem. Our little explosion damage won't do. So let's talk about how we're going to set this up. In essence, we're going to build a loop. It's going to start off by saying, all right, is the robot alive? If he is, let's find out how much health he's got. Okay, now we know how much health he has. Let's subtract that from 100 to get the difference. And then let's give that health back to him. And it's just going to repeat that every 0.5 seconds. Now, the first part of that is checking to see if the robot's alive. Obviously, you don't need to heal a robot that's already blown up. So let's right-click. I'm going to come to New Condition and choose Is Alive. And we'll go ahead and plug that into the finished of the actor factory. Now, it's going to have to check and see what player is alive, and a bot actually counts here. So we can take this variable that's storing our bot and connect that right in, no problem. Okay, so we've decided that the bot is alive. Now what? We need to get his health. So let's right-click, go to New Action, and we'll choose the Object Property subcategory, and we'll grab Get Property. So if he is alive, that's set to true. Let's plug this into Get Property, and there's some setup required here. First off, we need to give this a target. Well, that's easy. We're grabbing the bot's health, so we can drag our target down to that little variable that's currently storing the bot. Let me move some of my nodes around so that nothing is really overlapping too much. Okay, now next we have some other things. We need to know the property name. That's easy. That's health. So now we're grabbing the health of the bot, but what are we going to do with it? We're going to output it. Now, that health is going to go out as an integer value. So that's just something you have to know. So let's right-click on int and choose Create New Int Value. And that's going to be the robot's health. Excellent. Now, we know the current health of the robot, but what we need is the difference between that and full health. We're going to create that with a math expression. So let's right-click, go to New Action, choose Math, and we're going to choose Subtract Int. We'll plug the output of our Get Property into the input of our Subtract Int. Now let's take a look at the properties. We have value A and value B. The way this works is it's going to take A and subtract B from it. So we'll take value A and hard code that to 100, which is what we'll consider to be full health. And then we'll take value B and plug its input into our int variable. So let's say our robot had 60 health. We'll subtract 60 from 100, which will give us 40. And so now we know exactly how much to give the robot back to give him full health. Now, it works both ways. If some magically improbable way we ended up with a robot that had 115 health, it would see that as well. When it subtracted the two, it would actually remove the difference for us. So now let's right-click and let's add this health back on. So I'm going to go to New Action, and we'll grab the actor, and we want to choose Modify Health. So New Action, Actor, Modify Health. We've got to plug the output of our Subtract Int to the input of our Modify Health. We've got to give this a target. So let's connect this all the way back to the variable currently storing our bot. And we need an amount to give it, but notice the amount is looking for a float value and not an integer. They're actually color-coded. An integer is cyan, but a float is blue. But on our subtract int, there is a float result. So I'm going to right-click on float result, choose create new float variable, and plug this into the amount. So now, whatever we found out to be the difference between full health and our current health, that is going to be modified. Notice I didn't say added. We need to select our modify health and make sure that the heal checkbox is on, because without that, we'll actually be taking that much health away, and that's not so good. Okay, so now, with that, all we need to do is wrap back around from the output of our modify health into the in of our is alive, and we have just created a loop. The problem with this is that this loop will continue to cycle at game frame rate speed. So that's a lot of calculation. That's a lot more calculation than we need. I'm going to take the out of our modify health, right click, grab set activate delay, and we'll set this to 0.5 seconds. So now we're healing him back every 0.5 seconds. Let's just go ahead and give this a quick try. And there's our light.
Unit in position.
And now he's coming for us. And he's certainly not dying. In fact, he's about to kill us. Let's let him kill us. Alright. So he killed us. Now that's great. It did make the last battle a lot more exciting now that he was harder to kill. Now we should be, also go ahead and test to see if we can blow him up with the rocket launcher, but before we even do that, the problem is that it's hard to see what's going on under the hood. So I want to set up some debug sequence objects that'll just allow us an easier way to test everything. So let's go back into Kismet. I'm going to start off by logging out the bot character's health every time that this loop runs. So I'm going to start off by right-clicking, choosing New Action. Let's come down to MISC for miscellaneous and grab a log. Now, we can take the output of our get property and plug that into our log, and that will activate the log sequence object. The problem is we need to feed it the value of this variable, and this variable is an int. There's no place to plug an int. That's because by default, all of the inputs on a log are hidden, so all we have to do to expose them is right-click, choose Expose Variable, and grab int. Now we can plug that in, like so, and now we are ready to report out the health. Let's give that just a really quick try. That's still working. The camera. Cool robot. And now he's coming to kill us. And we're getting 100s every half second. As we start to kill him, we get him all the way down to 22, but that's about as fast as we can go. Now, before he kills us, let's try the rocket launcher. Notice he's all the way back to 100% health. And that solved our problem. Okay, so at this point, we could set up some other parts of the debug system. We could set up infinite ammo as well as God mode if we just really kind of wanted to play around with him. I'll show you how to do that real quick, and then if you want to add it, you can. If you don't, that's cool too. For infinite ammo, I'm going to right-click, go to New Action, and come down to Pawn, and just grab the infinite ammo sequence object. Yes, there is a sequence object for that. And what we're going to do is connect this right back to the actor factory. So as soon as the actor factory spawns our bot, we'll give our player infinite ammo. We do need to create a player variable here, so I'm going to right click, choose new variable, choose player. Actually, come back here. Player, and then grab the player, and we'll plug that in. Now I'm just going to go ahead and switch off all players, so that's just for player 0. Okay, now the other thing we can do is put the character in God mode. Now to do that, I'm going to use a console command. So let's just right-click, New Action, and then under Miscellaneous, you'll see Console command. So we'll plug the output of our infinite ammo right into that. We just need to feed this some sort of a command. Now there's already one waiting for us. We just need to type in God That's going to put us in God mode automatically. We've got to feed this a target, though, so we'll feed this player 0. So we can test this out. Let's go ahead and run this back here to the switch because that's quicker. And here's our light. Now if we take a look at the messages that'll pop up in the left-hand side of the screen, we should see God mode pop up. Yep. So now he can't kill us. But now as we open fire, we can just go nuts on him, and as soon as our ammo gets down to 0, it's just going to reset, so we're never going to run out of ammo. It's a great way to test everything, and when you're done, just nuke out the nodes. So we have our health system in place, we know it's working. That's going to wrap things up for this video. Thanks a lot. Alright, the last thing we're going to do to make our level a bit more cinematic is add in music support. Now there's already a very nice music handling system that's integrated that we don't really have to do much to play with. All we have to do is tell it what songs to play and when to play them. So it's very, very simple setup. Let's jump into Kismet. And what I'm going to do is just start off by right-clicking anywhere in open space. Let's go to New Action, come down to Sound, and you'll see Play Music Track. It's a very simple node. It just has an input and an out. If we take a look at its properties, it's got some really cool stuff. It's got autoplay, a fade-in time, fade-in volume level, fade-out time, so you can do crossfading with this. It is, however, listening for a sound cue, so we've got to go find a sound cue for it. Now, I'm going to close out Kismet for just a moment and open up the content browser, and let's just search for music. So I'll click on All Assets and type in music. Now, there are several different things you can use here. What I'm going to grab, let's see, we've got A Music ROM Necris Ambient 1 Q. So there it is in action. I'm going to right-click and stop that. Now, with that selected, let's go ahead and close out the content browser, jump back into Kismet, click the Play Music Track, expand its music track, and then for the sound cue, we'll just use that selection. Now, the fade-in time is 5 seconds. That's pretty extreme for what I've got in mind, so let's go ahead and set that to 3, and let's set the fade-out time down to about 1.5 seconds, because we want the next track to come in fairly quickly, so I don't want a whole lot of crossfade there. All right, now when are we going to start playing this? Well, let's start playing this as soon as the level loads. And we can go ahead and test this out, so it doesn't really matter where we spawn in. We have music. Alright, that's cool. Now, we want to change the music. As soon as the player uses the switch, we're actually going to add some kind of tension-filled music. Now, the cool thing is we've already got some of that. We don't have to record any. If we jump into the content browser again, you'll see, if you scroll down, A Music ROM Necris 01 Tension 01 Q. So if you listen to this, just double-click it. So let's right-click and go ahead and stop that. So that sounds pretty cool. We're going to play that throughout the 8 seconds of our little animation. So let's close out the content browser, go back into Kismet. Now I'm going to grab this play music track and just hit Control-C, Control-V to make a duplicate of it. Let's grab the one that just came in, and I'll use the current selection in the content browser, which is Tension 01 Q. Fade in time, I want this to be really quick, so let's fade it in over a second, and its fade out can be 1 second as well. Now, when are we going to play this? Since we want to play this during our animation, it stands to reason that we would want to fire it off as soon as the player used the trigger. So we'll plug it into the used of the trigger. Now, this is where it starts to get fun. As soon as the bot comes in, I actually want to change the music again. We're going to switch over to some action-packed music. So let's jump out of Kismet, take a look in the content browser, and we have ROM Necris 01 Action 01 Q, which is and we'll right-click and click Stop. So that's what we want to play as soon as the battle with the robot begins. So with that selected in the content browser, let's go back over to Kismet. I'm just going to hit Control-V to paste in another play music track. Inside its properties, open up music track, and then we'll just click on the Use Selected Object in Content Browser button. Now, when are we going to play that? We want to start playing that as soon as the spawn is finished. So we'll go ahead and just leave that there. It's crossing over a few wires, but that's okay. It's just kind of a little thing there. Now, once that's done, I'm still not finished. I want to end that action-packed music with a stinger. Now, stinger is a musical... It's kind of like a snare that's there to allow for a change in tone. It's a way to wrap up a musical movement. Now, there are several of these available to us. So if we open up the content browser... Actually, we could just scroll down because they're all going to be right here. So here's a couple of them. Here's the stinger for a killing spree. Here's one for a multi-kill. You see they're all just a little bit different. There's several different ones to choose from. What I'm going to grab... You see we've got ROM Necros Stinger for kill 3. That's a good one right there. So you got anything better? Ooh, that's even more over the top. I love it. All right, let's grab this one. So I've got A Stinger, ROM Necros 01, Killing Spree 02Q. So go ahead and close that off. Let's jump into Kismet. Now, we want this to take place. We want this track to come in as soon as the robot dies. Now, this is where things get a little bit tricky. What we're going to do is, first off, let's duplicate our little play music track one more time, and let's get the appropriate stinger applied, which is just to click our little button here. So now you can see A Stinger, ROM Necros 01, Killing Spree 02. That's exactly what we need, but we need some way to tell the system that the robot has been killed and then set that up. Now, what I'm going to do is take our little play music track, move it over here to the end, and let's right click. We're going to create a new event, and if we come over to pawn, there's an event called death. So this waits for a pawn to die. All we need to do is plug the death into the play music track. It's pretty straightforward. Now, there's a couple of things we got to do here. One is that we've got to tell this event that it's listening for the death of the actual bot that we spawned in the level. And that's where things get a little bit interesting. We have to actually bring in a special sequence object just to do that. So I'm going to right-click, go to New Action. And if we go under Event, you'll see Attach to Event. Select this. Now I'm going to plug this to our second move to actor. It really doesn't matter where it goes. As long as the bot exists at the time it's called, it's going to attach that bot to this guy. So that's all we need. So as soon as we're finished, we'll fire this off. The attachee is going to be our bot. So let's drag a wire back here to our variable that's storing our bot. And the event will be this death event. Okay, now we should be able to try this out at this point. So let's right-click, play from here. We have music. Oh, there's our tension music.
Unit in position.
And there's our action music. And this guy won't die without the rocket launcher, so let's go get the rocket launcher. Hold still. And we got our stinger, but it had a little bit of a fade in, which is a little bit of a letdown. So let's go back into Kismet, and we're going to grab our little play music track for the stinger. We're going to give it a fade in time of 0. It's just going to immediately be there. Now we'll go ahead and set its fade out time to 0 as well. So it's just going to be large and in charge right there in your face. Let's see. Also, the fade in volume level, I'm going to pick this up. So that's going to be a nice loud piece of sound effect. Now, what I'm going to do next, and this is something I'm just kind of throwing in, we're going to switch back to our ambient music after he's toast. So if we come back up here to our initial conditions, we see our original play music track, which was playing our ambient sound. I'm going to hit Control-C, fly back over here to our little play music track for the stinger, hit Control-V, connect the two together, but I'm going to put a delay in here. We're going to right-click. Actually, we may not need that. There's a 3-second delay in time, so it might actually work just right there on its own. So let's give this a quick try. Now, to make things easier, I'm actually going to start off with the rocket launcher. We'll go get that first. So we've got this ambient music, everything's kind of creepy, goes well with the blue mood lighting. And then tension music.
Unit in position.
Action music. We could maybe speed up the fade in on the action music. And yeah, we are going to need a delay because that second track is just coming in way too quick. So let's right click here. Let's set an activate delay of, say, 3 seconds, which in a best case scenario will give us just a little bit of silence before we bring in the ambient music again. And while we're at it, let's grab our action music, which is coming in as soon as the actor factory is finished. And we're going to take its fade in time down to like 0.2 seconds. So there's almost no fade. So we go from ambient to tension.
Unit in position.
There we go. That was much quicker. He's already trying to kill us. Let's get the rocket launcher. Hold still. There we go. So he dies and our ambient music comes back. So that wraps everything up that I wanted to show you. We've handled everything from a cinematic movie to working with the results of that cinematic movie, adding in music, and not all of it was done entirely in Matinee. I want you to keep that in mind, though. I mean, in a best-case scenario, this is going to give you some great ideas for use in your levels. Please experiment with this stuff. Try out your own ideas. You can come up with some great things using the cinematic system through Matinee as well as Kismet. But that is going to wrap things up for this video. Thanks a lot.
We'll be right back.